Greetings, groovy people. Welcome to the channel. This is the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon. In the background, I am doing an ink session. I'm inking the cover for Volume 2 of Dark Horse. And that's what I'm going to be talking about this Wednesday in this video. Also, happy birthday to my sister! She doesn't watch these videos, but I at least wanted to say that. Happy birthday to her. All my usual disclaimers. Dark Horse is my free, not safe for work webcomic. You can find it down in the description. There's links either to the main page or its mirrors. And the main page, of course, has a shop with whatever you want to purchase if you are interested in that. Otherwise, it's free, period. Let's go ahead and get started. So the way I determine whether or not something is in one volume or another tends to be based on page length, because eventually, should this comic get popular enough to garner a fandom that could support a Kickstarter, I would like to get this printed in the roughly 5x7 manga sized booklets, the ones that are sold here in the US. Manga's a little bit different abroad. A lot of people already know this, but quite often mangas get serialized and are printed in magazines, and then once there's enough pages, they will compile it into a book volume if it's popular enough to sell that way. So with my own comic, I'm kind of taking that lead, since it is kind of a mixture of both Western and Eastern. I print them individually as roughly 30-page small booklets, so that I can sell them at conventions and markets and outdoor events or online. But the end game goal would be to have an actual printed booklet of it, similar to the Flipside book that I supported earlier this year. That's kind of how I would like for them to be printed out eventually. Each booklet I kind of gauge by looking at the manga that I have in my own library, and they're usually anywhere between 150 to 170. Occasionally they'll get up into like the 200s, that large of a booklet. Because I've been trying to keep each act roughly 30 some odd pages, I decided I was going to go ahead and shoot for Volume 1 to be around 170 pages. Which at the end of Act 7, the Crystal Lotus, I actually reached that number. And if I wanted to, I think what I'll do is I will have like some additional art that I work on just to kind of add into the booklet, like you oftentimes see with works by Clamp or other more popular artists than me, writers and artists. The other thing is that I think that the Crystal Lotus is a good point in which to end the first volume, because essentially, since this is the Crystal Lotus Chronicles, it's going to be a larger series. I think this is a good stopping point. The setup has been made. We have an idea of what's going on, and this is kind of a turning point, since the characters are now discovering that they themselves have magic and actually have experienced it. It's more than just Yuli coming in here and telling them that they have magic. They're actually expressing that magic. When we get into Volume 2, which I finally finished thumbnailing Act 8, which is going to be Opposition, that's the title. As we get into Volume 2, we're going to be kind of progressing the story along and getting some more action scenes. We're going to start out by kind of flipping to the enemy's point of view for a little while. I gotta make sure that I'm careful about my dates, because when I do this flash forward in Opposition, I need to try to make sure that it's understood that technically what's happening with Keisuma, the conversations that are being held, are technically taking place once the timeline starts up again, so to speak. So at the same time that we're seeing Keisuma having a discussion with a character named Ozias, who I get to introduce! Oh my god, I'm so excited. I'm so excited to draw Ozias again. But I need to make sure that people understand later that that conversation is taking place during the same time warp is taking place when they finally return to the present day. if that makes sense. Time is kind of confusing, and I have all my notes and lines written down, but I'm going to have to make another timeline scroll probably whenever I start posting this onto Tapas and Webtoons, and I'll definitely need to have an updated timeline for Comic Fury as well, though I just had one of those, so I don't feel the need to do that quite yet. So that's kind of the explanation why this is a volume 2 cover. I'm not sure how well I have it designed. I was watching a video on composition just yesterday, and that's after I've inked and started coloring this image, which I think I'm going to have a Friday night video this week where I'm coloring the cover, but I'm going to be talking about, you know, the environment and nature and shit. So if that's something that doesn't interest you, you might not want to tune into that video. It's going to be long. But with the cover, I tried, you know, I didn't really do like the rule of 3. I wonder if it's like a reverse spiral thing coming from the other side. I forget the name of the spiral, the guy it's named after. Next year, I'm really going to be trying to focus on improving my composition. I tried to have somewhat of a swoop. I usually do like to have like a diagonal, but I'm not sure that I was all that successful. And in the actual, like, you can't tell in the inking, but there is actually some negative space. This Friday when I'm coloring the video, it'll be more evident that I did actually leave space at the top of the page so that there is a little bit of negative space in the upper left-hand corner, because I do like to have some kind of an interesting line, but I'm really not skilled enough, I don't think, to really say that I've accomplished having that diagonal. Even if you kind of, well, I mean, if you do the rule of thirds, things kind of lie on the lines. The rule of thirds is where you have your image and it's vertically split into thirds, so that means there would be 2 lines but 3 sections, and then horizontally split into thirds. And then points of interest, generally speaking, are supposed to lay on those lines, but I'm not certain that I really did that with this image. I wanted to make sure that I had, like, you know, some central figures. With Odysseus and Kana, I kind of have them lined up to make a diagonal, and then I tried to use some of Keisuma's hair to kind of promote that diagonal. And of course there are some problems with proportions on some of the faces, which once I scanned it into the computer, I was able to fix those up a little bit better. I kind of messed up Rina's mouth, her face, but I work on that also digitally in the computer to kind of fix that up a bit. But that's kind of what's going on with the cover, because I don't normally have several characters kind of stacked on top of each other, but I like to bring that out whenever I do a volume cover, to just kind of make it feel a little more epic, to kind of relay a little bit of what is to come in that volume. So if you take a look at the volume 1 cover, which I'll put up here, you can see that I have a lot of the characters kind of stacked on top of each other. It's kind of a hot mess. I'm not sure that I like this cover, but I've gotten compliments on it. I don't know that those are earned, but I certainly do appreciate that. But you can see that it's definitely a lot more epic than like the chapter or act covers, which the act covers are more to kind of just give a preview or symbolize things that are going to happen within that particular act. And I'll go ahead and throw up a couple of the covers just in a row. Now, Contact, Keisuma doesn't actually really appear in that act. However, because she is the main antagonist and she's the reason why Odysseus travels back in time and is in the park, that's why I chose to have her on the cover, just to kind of hint at the idea that she is going to be the main antagonist. And I wanted to draw her. I guess that's the other reason. So, yeah, she's not present in the act, but her presence is present, because that's what has started this whole scenario. I have been breaking in a new nib, so I had a little bit of trouble inking still. Not nearly as much as I had when I was inking some Time Warp pages earlier in the month, but Overall, I was fairly happy with how the inking went on this. Tried to do a little bit of pointillism. It's not quite dots. The nib is still a little shaky, so they're actually kind of like V's whenever I get down to Shimiko, and each section of the page, the character's element or power or whatever you want to call it is part of them, so kind of giving a hint of what's to come in this volume. But I kind of, even though those weren't actual, like little individual dots, even though the nib did kind of splay a little tiny bit, I'm okay with that. I kind of like the effect that produces. So I was okay with how that worked, although I would like for my pen, I'm not going to blame the pen, but I would like to get more acclimated to it so that I can be better. Normally, I will do pointillism with a technical pen, like a Micron, or I have those Faber-Castell, I think is how it's pronounced. I have those sets of markers, but I already had the pen out, and I kind of like trying to do my effects with the nib, so I went ahead and did it that way. I'm gonna wrap up the video pretty soon here, but I did want to just comment that you can see Odysseus, his powers, his element tends to be connected with flora and with plants, trees, things of that nature. Kana's element is derived from light. I can't wait to get into ceremony and kind of showing up. Not ceremony, Awakenings is the act where we get to see her powers awaken, and I'm really excited to revisit that because while it is a newer act that just posted to Comic Fury not that long ago, there are a few editing things that I kind of wanted to tackle, so I'm excited that I'm slowly catching up with the revamp, and eventually I'm going to be able to kind of finish up all the rest of the acts. I project that I'll have the revamp completed hopefully in 2022. And then I can just put all my focus into creating just one act and then doing the edits and getting them ready for print and such. So, but kind of getting back to the characters, Rina, as we just discovered in the Crystal Lotus, her power derives from the element of water and ice. And then Shimiko is kind of spatial. We say darkness, but it's more like spatial, things of that nature. Things that you would find in a video game. I'm eventually going to continue my origin story series because I want to gush about video games and Full Metal Alchemist. But I need to get my shit together so that I can actually put together a video that is coherent. And to be quite honest, I really need to reread Full Metal Alchemist. I've only read it twice. No, I've only read it once, and then I've seen the animes several times, both versions. I like them both. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in Friday's video, if I get that video done. If it's not this Friday, it'll be next Friday. Yeah, that's all I really had to say this week. That's plenty. This is going to be a long enough video. I'm just really stoked to be starting up on Act 8, Opposition. It's going to be posting October 6th on Webtoons. I'm going to, of course, have pages early on Patreon, so if that's something you're interested in, if you want to see the pages early, you can check that out. Links are down in the description for Patreon, Subscribestar. I don't have anyone subscribed on Subscribestar right now, but if someone subscribes there, I will start uploading stuff. I do things occasionally there, but it's kind of work intensive to keep all these social medias updated, particularly if there's nobody there. If it's empty, I only really like to post the covers and stuff so that people know that the site is active and waiting for people. So, and then that's not to guilt trip anyone to go over there. I'm just commenting, just stating that. Otherwise, if you want to support the channel, sub, do the bell thing, it's all cool. And I will check y'all out later. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, you're welcome to leave those down below. Otherwise, peace and love. Fare you well, and keep on trucking.